Welcome back to the college football edition of the V.O.C. YouTube channel. College football has been wacky, it's been crazy. Last week was our first major week as we looked at the season and how far we have gone, which hasn't been very far, but we learned a lot last week, I think, and it's very interesting to look at it. I'm going to quickly break it down, talk about one game in particular, a little bit more in length, and then look at my picks this week, so let's jump into it.
Third down for us.
All right, a couple quick hits here. Look, Colorado, they finally lose. They play Oregon, they lose. Not only did they lose, they get destroyed, right? The holes that everybody's been talking about was finally shown and proven. Look, it's going to take some time for Colorado to get better. Am I jumping off the Deion and Colorado bandwagon? No, I'm not. I'm not. It was the worst bet ever, probably, of having them to win outright and then them getting completely destroyed last week. But look, they're not dead. They aren't going to go anywhere. They're going to be there. They play USC this week. I don't think they quite win that game, but they're not dead. And I like what Deion said after the game is like, look, if you're going to get me now, because this is the worst we're going to be, and I truly believe that. Talk about a dead program. Clemson's dead. You should have beat Florida State. You lose, you're dead. Dabo's lost whatever he once had. That window closes. And this is how interesting it is when you have great coaches like a Nick Saban and Bill Belichick, where their window doesn't feel like it ever closes. It expands compared to all the other coaches. And Dabo's window has clearly closed, and the program is dead. The Pac-12 is a lot of fun. A lot of ranked teams. Some of the best teams in the conference in a long, long time. Oregon State, Washington State, the game, the bowl of nobody wants them. I told you Washington State was going to win. They did. It's very interesting when you have a conference that has broken up essentially because of how bad they have been and how nobody wants to watch them. And in their last year of existence, this is probably arguably the best they ever have been. It's very, very interesting when we look at it. Final quick hit here. Look, Penn State has a legitimate chance to win the Big Ten. I picked Michigan, but I really liked Penn State coming in. I was just a little nervous about their quarterback not playing, James Franklin, but look, they have what you need. Offense, defensive line. Drew Aller is a very good quarterback. Running backs. Penn State is a legitimate threat to Michigan. And I'm not just saying that because Michigan hasn't played well and played nobody. Penn State hasn't really played anybody either. But what they did to Iowa last week was very telling against a defensive team, what they could kind of do offensively. And with their defense, it was very interesting to watch. I really like Penn State, and they're a legitimate shot to beat Michigan. And I think ultimately they're a bigger threat to Michigan than Ohio State is. All right, let's talk about the game of the week last week, right? It was Notre Dame, Ohio State. Didn't go to the game, but I was in South Bend for the atmosphere of it. Hung out, tailgated. The buzz on campus was crazy. I talked about it before. It was unlike I've ever seen a Notre Dame game day, anything like it. It was just crazy. Notre Dame ultimately loses on the last play of the game, 17-13, 17-14, excuse me, in a game where Notre Dame should have won. Outright, should have won. They should have very easily been up 13-3 at halftime. You miss a field goal. You go to halftime 3-0 and feeling okay. Let's see what Notre Dame can do here. The problem was they never put Ohio State away when they probably should have or they could have. They left Ohio State in it. And when you have a team like Ohio State that has as much talent as they have, you can't do that because you're ultimately going to lose. I think my best description of the game was confusion. It was one of those games where the game was over and everybody looked at each other and was like, what the hell just happened? Both sides. What the hell just happened? Ohio State was like, how did we win that game? Notre Dame's, how did we lose that game? It was very interesting. It was one of those games. It reminded me of the Bush Push game. You're like, what? Notre Dame should have won. There's a lot of things where I'd say this is why they lost the game. The couple fourth downs that Notre Dame missed hurt. Coaching for Notre Dame, having the last two plays, having 10 players on the field, that hurt tremendously just from a standpoint of how did Marcus Freeman and that staff not understand what the hell was going on? and then to have the guy score the touchdown running right up the hole where that guy should have been, it was tough. And then, I think one of the bigger plays, especially in the second half, final drive for Notre Dame, is Sam Hartman, instead of taking the sack on the screen pass, throws an incompletion. That kills time. I mean, that's 20 seconds that could have wasted off the clock right before you ran another play on third down there. Ohio State would have been forced to use their last timeout. It would have been very, very telling. I think Notre Dame's defense played better than I thought it would play. Defensive line kind of showed out. When it's not, I don't think it's a very good defensive front for Notre Dame. So I don't know if that tells how bad the Ohio State offensive line is. But when I look at it for Ohio State, they should have ran away with that game in the way that Notre Dame played. Notre Dame gave it away, but Kyle McCord, to me, he's not a quarterback like Ohio State's had. Him on the sidelines, emotional. I get it. Like, you have a lot of pressure. You're not the reason you won the game, right? Your receivers, coaching won you that game. It was very telling to me with Ohio State. But ultimately, when I look at Ohio State, like I said, they should have won that game very easily. I think both sides could have won the game very easily, but for Ohio State, missed passes by Kyle McCord, where I think if C.J. Stroud or Justin Fields is there for Ohio State, I think those are touchdown passes he missed. The one I think of the most is Trayvon Henderson's running to the corner of the end zone. J.D. Bertrand's on him and has him beat. McCord underthrows the ball. It ends up being pass interference, but if you throw him the ball on time, it's a touchdown. It was a very sloppy game from both teams. Neither team played great. Ohio State played just good enough to win the game, and Notre Dame played just bad enough to lose themselves the game. I'm not on the fire Marcus bandwagon at all. I'm not. But it's going to be interesting moving forward with the excuses of, with 10 players on the field. I don't know. It's inexperienced. That's going to be the interesting thing for me, because at a certain point, you're either going to have to learn it, know everything, or not. And, that will be, time will tell on that one. But when I look at Ryan Day, he looks uncomfortable to me. It was sickening to watch him. He looks like a drug addict. He has so much pressure on him from that job because he's not done the things to beat Michigan, beat Alabama, lose to Clemson when you should have beat him. You had the better team. Lose to Georgia when you should have beat him. I mean, he just looks like he has so much pressure on him. And that game brought a lot of pressure for him because you have an Ohio State graduate on the other side in Marcus Freeman. And when you have Marcus Freeman at a program like Notre Dame doing pretty well so far, and if Marcus would have beat him, then there's pressure on Ryan Day from the Ohio State people. Like, why don't we just go hire Marcus from Notre Dame because he can do it? He looks uncomfortable. He's taking on that villain role, and I don't know if he wants that villain role, but he's taking that on. I mean, his comments after the game were ridiculous. To go after Lou Holtz, whatever. Lou Holtz is going to say stuff. Lou Holtz has every right to say stuff. He's one of the greatest coaches in college football history. Like, he has all the right to say. He's a Notre Dame guy through and through. He's not going to say anything bad about Notre Dame and something great about Ohio State. But that's not what Ryan Day was pissed about. Ryan Day just used him, but he was really talking about Michigan fans. When, you're calling our team weak. No, say it to Jim Harbaugh in Michigan, right? It's like, I'm not the biggest Michigan fan, but I'm not as scared of Michigan as you are, Ryan. It's just, to me, he wanted to say that to Michigan, and he wants to. And he might if they beat Michigan this year. I think it's a slim chance. But it's like, that's not the forum to take it out on, And to say you had one bad half the last couple of years, that's a lie. That's a lie, Ryan. I was at the Ohio State-Michigan game where you guys lost a couple years ago. You got outplayed. You got outbeat. You got out-physicaled. Notre Dame, I thought, out-physicaled them to a certain point. They just lasted compared to the other times. It was very... Ryan Day is not... He doesn't handle pressure well. I think he's got a lot of pressure on himself. And ultimately, his season, it doesn't come down to beating Notre Dame and screaming at Lou Holtz. It comes down to that game at the end of the year, Thanksgiving weekend, when you got to play Michigan. And do I think Ohio State took a step forward in that pursuit? A little, but not a whole lot. Not as much as Ryan Day made it seem. Look, I'm the biggest Notre Dame fan ever, but to beat a team like that can't win big games in the last 25 years, I mean, it's kind of ironic, So, what have you gained in that game? People that hate you and more pressure that I don't think you want. So I think that was my biggest takeaway. But all in all, look, Ohio State won the game, Notre Dame lost it. It was one of those games where it was like, what the hell happened at the end of it? And it just sucks to be a Notre Dame fan because with Marcus, I feel like we're close, but we got to get over that hump. So it'll be interesting how they bounce back this week with Duke, who's a very good team. You have game day there again, 17th ranked. Mike Elko understands Notre Dame and what they want to do, being a defense coordinator there, and a couple of years ago. So last year when they lost to Ohio State, they lost to Marshall. So I think that's the biggest telling card. It's not that you lose this game for Notre Dame. It's what do you do now moving forward, I think will be the tell. And for Ohio State, you got a lot of work to do before you beat Michigan. Because all in all, for 55 minutes a game, Notre Dame was a better team. So you have to fix things, and if you want to Ohio versus the world or versus whatever you want to say, next time say it to Jim Harbaugh's face, and hopefully you get your chance. You'll get your chance to do that. I just don't know if you want it. It doesn't feel like it. That's why I feel like he kind of went after Lou Holtz a little bit. All right, peace on that game. Move forward. Look, now we're moving on to Duke. All right, picks this week. I went 6-2 last week, 17-12 in the year, kind of moving. Slow start a couple weeks ago. We're getting back. Number 10, Utah, 4-0. At number 19, Oregon State, 3-1. Oregon State's a 4-point favorite. I didn't know what the line was until I wrote it down. It's kind of a surprising line. Game is tonight. I would have thought Utah would have been favored by 1, so I would have leaned heavy on Oregon State. I'm still going to pick Oregon State in this one, bouncing back from a loss at home. They have their quarterback, Utah. We still don't know if Cam Rising is going to play yet, or if he does, when. That whole scenario, I'm going to go with Oregon State. Number 22, Florida, 3-1 at Kentucky, 4-0. Kentucky's a 1-point favorite. This is interesting because I'm not really high on Florida this year, but you beat Tennessee. You kind of, you lose to Utah. We'll give it to you. It's a good team, top 10 team. You didn't look very good in it. What happens here? I think it's very, very interesting. This one's tough. I'm going to pick Kentucky in this one. I think it's going to be close, just like what everybody expects. Number 24, Kansas, 4-0 at number 3, Texas, who's 4-0 as well. Texas, 16-point favorite. Look, I like Texas. Not even going to lie. I am high on them. I was high on them a couple weeks ago. Hook 'em, baby. Hook 'em. That's where I'm at with them. I think they beat Kansas. I almost said Kansas State. I think they beat Kansas. I think they cover. Number 13, LSU, 3-1. Minus 2.5-point favorite at number 20, Ole Miss, who's 3-1. Ole Miss coming off the loss to Alabama. LSU barely beating Arkansas. But who's a good team? So, I mean, that's a quality win. I think LSU wins this game. As much as I want to hype on the Lane train, as much as I wish Lane's going to win, I just think LSU has the better team, and I think LSU pulls it off. But I think it'll be tight until about the fourth quarter. Really sticking with SEC this week. South Carolina, 2-2 at number 21, Tennessee, who's 3-1. Tennessee's 11.5-point favorite. I think the number's a little large. South Carolina beat them last year. It was at South Carolina. I think if that's South Carolina this year, I'd probably pick South Carolina as well. I think it's close. I think South Carolina covers, but I think Tennessee ultimately ends up winning the game. All right, that's going to do it for this week's video. Look, Colorado's not dead. Clemson, dead. Pac-12, fun to watch in their last year. I think that's crazy and ironic to think of. I think Penn State legitimately can win the Big Ten as the season moves forward. They have a legitimate team to do it. If you want a team to beat Michigan, I don't think it's Ohio State. I think it's Penn State. Ryan Day is more afraid of Michigan than anything else. He looks like a crack addict on the sidelines because of the pressure. It's gross. It's sickening. It's me versus you, Ryan Day. That's what I think. And then my picks this week. Thanks for watching.